Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tank12. However you call me, I don't really care. And welcome back to World Tanks. Today we're on test server 1.4 and the very first of the French wheeled light tanks. We're going to be taking a look at the Panhard AMD 178B. This vehicle is a tier 6 French light wheeled tank. I'm not sure if it's called a tank or if it's more on the side of an armored car. It does have the armament of a tank, but everything else screams armored car. Wheels and basically armored chassis that doesn't hold up to the standard of a tank. Let's take a look at the tech tree and see how you can get to this vehicle. Well, you have to grind the old light tank line until the AMX ELC, and from there on you get the AMD 178B. You can see this is going to be a tough grind. 47mm gun at tier 6 and two other guns that you have to grind until you get the top 75mm gun. Then a second turret, 3 radios, but I think nope, you have to grind all 3 of them, and then the new set of wheels. So it's going to look like a very awkward and uninspiring grind to get this vehicle fully loaded out. The question now is it worth being fully loaded out? Well, we're still in the test server, so everything here is still subject to change. All the characteristics that we're going to cover any second now, they're all subject to change, so take everything with a grain of salt. Also, just a quick disclaimer, all the crew right over here and the equipment is top notch, so the crew is a bit high, a bit unrealistically high skilled in my opinion. I mean, I'm not sure if, yeah, there are probably some people who've got their French light tank crew at 4 skill, but I'm not sure. I don't think everyone has it, so keep that in mind. So the top upgraded tier 6 AMD 178B is coming in with a 75mm gun. It has 120mm average penetration, 14.59 rounds per minute, and a pretty damn good turret traverse speed, 53.33 degrees per second. Aim time is also decent, 1.59 seconds. It's actually pretty good, and dispersion at 100 meters with 0.38 is not bad either. So gun wise, statistically speaking, you're not going to be looking down a terrible vehicle with its gun. The only downside maybe is that the pen on the 75mm gun is only 120, and the APCR rounds come in at 160mm pen. The high explosive rounds though, on the other hand, with 75mm of pen, that's a pretty damn good penetration rate for a tier 6 light tank, so keep that in mind. 75mm of pen on the high explosive round on a 75mm gun, not too bad. Also, gun depression 12 degrees and gun elevation with 14 degrees aren't too bad either. So moving on to survivability. Well, this tank doesn't have any survivability. 570 HP, that's on the lower end spectrum of light tanks. Now the survivability of this tank is basically its mobility. You have to set everything you have on the speed that this tank has. Your armor is basically your top speed going forward and your top speed going backwards. So without further ado, without wasting a lot of time on armor, I'd say let's move on to mobility, because mobility is what this tank and this tank line lies at. 65 kilometers per hour going forward and 65 kilometers per hour going backwards. Now that is something that you can see at tier 6, that is very nice. The difference with these wheeled vehicles in direct comparison to the tracked vehicles is that you no longer can turn your tank or armored car in one position. If you're like fixed, sitting in front of you, and you have an AMX 13105, you can just turn your tank in said position without driving forwards or backwards. because your tracks, one of them can go forward, one of them can go backwards, and you can either maneuver to the right or to the left while being stationary. Now this turning is no longer possible because you're riding in an armored car that has wheels. These wheels, each single one of them, can be knocked out separately, and if you lose one wheel, it's not going to cost your life, but it is going to slow you down quite substantially. So do not lose any of those wheels, because it's going to inflict a lot of pain on your mobility, and it's going to decrease your ability to turn, to gain speed, and it basically renders you useless, because that is exactly what you need. Those wheels need to be spinning. On this tier 6 version, you do not have third set of wheels or fourth set of wheels that you can leave down and go into cruise mode. That cruise mode only comes in at tier 8, so you don't have that yet. At tier 6, you have the top speed, you have a 24 degrees maximum wheel turning angle, and you'll notice that when you're driving and you do not have any speed, turning your vehicle is really painfully slow. So the logical, let's say the logical solution to that is just keep on driving, right, to maintain the speed. Now that kind of is a very funny story, because if you try to keep your speed, you might run into a situation where you crash your vehicle into some other tank, or where you flip your tank because you are so damn fast. But 65 kilometers, I actually noticed it is okay to handle the vehicle. It handles fairly nice, and you can come around. But the thing is, 65 kilometers at this tier, once you get close to enemy vehicles, they are actually able to hit you, because you do not have like the 70-80 kilometers per hour top speed that some other Panhard light tanks have, like the Lynx, for example. But still, concealment wise and view range wise, now view range is something that is very important for a light tank, especially since they want you to play this as an active scout, a scout that runs around, spots vehicles, and is always active and not sitting in a bush. You don't even have the opportunity to equip binoculars. They don't want you to be sitting in a bush. So what I've opted to do is put on coated optics and vertical stabilizers and a toolbox in case one of my wheels gets hit and destroyed, because I really need that wheel to be functioning again to allow me to have mobility. Now, the thing is, this vehicle and this vehicle type does not allow you for any kind of errors. Errors and mistakes from the driver are usually resulting in fatal collisions, or you're going to get shot quite easily. You only have 570 HP, everything is going through your armor, and you only have the protection of your speed. So mistakes can be quite fatal at that top speed, very, very much so. The thing is, 356 meters of view range with a top crew, like a really, really good crew and great equipment, is not going to cut it. 356, now you're expected to be playing against tier 8 vehicles, tier 7 vehicles, tier 6 vehicles, sometimes even tier 4s and tier 5s, but the chances are rare that you're always going to be getting a tier 5, tier 6 matchup, right? So 356 meters view range at tier 8 is going to be really cutting it short. And you'll notice what I mean afterwards in the game, because you have to get really close up, and the closer you get, the higher the chance is there to get shot by the enemy tanks, right? So yeah, we're going to be jumping into a game. We're going to be testing out the vehicle, and you can see for yourself what kind of challenges lie ahead for every guy driving this tank. 2 games that I've played recently in this vehicle. The very first is going to be on Radshire, and being the lowest tier, now that's nothing special, especially since the test server is now full with these vehicles. So this is just a preview. The review of this vehicle is only going to be possible once it is released on the live server, so keep in mind that Everything that's happening here is pure chaos that we just cannot control. So what kind of happens with this vehicle, or with the style that how Wargaming wants you to play, is that people who are driving this armored car are extremely aggressive at the beginning of the matchup. You're so fast, you'll be able to get into any position very early on, and what happens is, especially on the test server, we spot the entire enemy team, or we spot like 50% of the enemy team that is also rushing towards us, and what happens is there's a huge fight in the middle of the map where just chaos ensues. And what you could see right there is I was actually just shot at by the EBR Hotchkiss, and he managed to destroy one of our wheels. We immediately lost a lot of speed, and it's very important, keep that in mind. It's going to be important for later on. So what happens in these engagements is that you don't really look where you're driving to or where you're driving at, and what happens is a lot of times you just run into something. Because you have so much speed on your vehicle, you're just going to run into shit. And it kind of is funny at first, but it really makes you wonder, like, is this supposed to be part of this experience, right? To be running into everything. Because I've noticed that the game engine has quite a bit of a hustle to accommodate these vehicles, because it's quite difficult to get them all balanced out, right? So what they're trying to get us to do is to be an active scout. 356 meters of view range, keep that in mind, and we just were hit by a tier 7, no tier 6 tank destroyer, and what happened right there is we just lost about almost half our HP. And what they're trying to do is make us play the active scout role, right? What happens right there is we try to do that, and you can see as soon as you have one wheel out of action, your speed decreases incredibly fast. And what happened was we drove up the cliff, or this hillside, with a destroyed wheel, and all we had was the focus on the AMD with our auto aim on, because we wanted to kill him. And what happened was we were slowing down because we only had 3 wheels in action, and we were taken out quite easily. Now this is one of the things that I found myself in a situation in which happened repeatedly, because this vehicle is so fast. You don't look where you're going, you don't concentrate enough, and what happens is you end up somewhere in a ditch, or you drive straight into a whole bunch of enemies and you get overwhelmed. So in this tank, the games can be extremely quickly over, and they can be very, very painful. At the very beginning, you only have 570 HP, and since you'll be ending up with tier 8 vehicles a lot, it's going to be quite hard to actually play as this tank was designed to be played by Wargaming, because 65 kilometers per hour is good, but if you're turning a little bit to the right, to the left, you'll lose a lot of speed sometimes. If you're driving up the hill, down the hill, you gain some speed, you lose some speed, but the problem is just, especially if you have to go up against higher tiers, it's going to be quite difficult. As soon as you get hit once, you might lose your wheel, and it's pretty much done for. So it's a very, very ungrateful tank to be playing, because the risk that you take when you're driving somewhere is rather high. It's ridiculous how quickly they can punish you, and it really takes time to get into it. It's a new kind of vehicle type, it's a new mechanic at tier 8 and tier 9, so I think that is just something you have to get into, you have to work for, and I don't mind that, but right now it's a test server. We have to see how it is on the live server. So I'd say let's move on to the other game and see what happens when you might have a bit of a better game where you are not the focus of attention. Let's see what that entails. So the last game, we were very aggressive, pushing to one spot of the map and then trying to be a bit of an active scout in the middle. It didn't turn out too well for us. We made one big mistake by driving up the hill with a destroyed wheel, and we got taken out. I'd say it's more on the side of stupidity than on the side of, well, this tank sucks, because obviously I used a vehicle that was damaged and in a bad situation to try to get up a hill, which was quite easily accessible to the enemy team from their hill, and they were quite fast by taking us out. So what happens when you have a good game in this game? So we're once again playing against some tier 8s, and you can see there this time around there are only 6 EVRs or 6 fast light-wheeled armored cars on the enemy team, and only 7 on our team, so it looks to be a bit more realistic to the standards of what the live server is going to be like. What you can see here is that the Lynx, the tier 8 vehicle right here, immediately goes into action, drives over the hill, and engages the E25 and gets knocked out. But you can just see the chaos that these vehicles are able to do by driving up and down a cliff and, you know, getting into the fray, while the enemy vehicles are just trying to get into position. I mean, we are overrunning them while they're trying to get into position. We're already there, so the speed obviously is something that might need to be addressed, because at the moment mobility on this kind of sense of gameplay, this dynamic really shakes up the entire game. Keep in mind, there are like tank destroyers, artillery pieces in the back of the map. They have no chance. You can just see, I mean, obviously it's a test server, but just imagine you're facing 1 or 2 of these vehicles in a live server and they just manage to break through. It's going to be heyday. Artillery is going to get bashed by their artillery or the light tanks, and all those tank destroyers are going to be spotted. Those glass cannons, the FVs, it's going to be a freaking nightmare for them, right? So I'm not sure if the game is ready for such an abrupt change, for such a change in dynamics after years and years of being the same. And this is just a tier 6 version, right? And I mean, it's nothing spectacular at the moment. It gets up 65 kilometers going forwards and backwards, which is rather funny to say. It's a lot of fun to be played, and it's so chaotic and it's dynamic, and it's just so different from what we've known and what we're used to. It's just going to be a huge change that we'll have to see if it's going to be fitting into the game. Now keep in mind, we are only at the beginning of this tech tree, right? This is the first vehicle we're playing, and what you can see immediately there is when I got blown up, my wheels explode as well, so your vehicle kind of pops up into the air because of the explosion that happens with the wheels, so that's pretty damn cool. But what you could see there also was this tank destroyer, the WZ-111. Once we were kind of on his side, we were able to drive forwards and backwards to 65 kilometers going forwards and backwards. He had absolutely no chance to get a shot up at us. And yeah, that's where it kind of got scary for especially the tank destroyers and the artillery pieces, where they really are not able to do anything against you while you're just driving past them with such speed. Especially the higher you go with the tier, the more trolly it gets, you know, the more you can run circles around them while they're kind of completely lost and having a headache. And that's the thing. The balance is going to be a big issue. It's right now, I mean, it's the test server. There are a lot of them running around. It might just be too chaotic at the moment. It might just be the dynamical change that really needs to happen, because we have a lot of games where tank destroyers sit in the back. They do absolutely nothing because they feel like they're invincible, because they can just hide in a bush. Same goes for artillery. They're invincible. No one needs to protect artillery anymore because artillery can run if something is going to happen, or there are just tanks sitting in front of it, and if that flank is getting pushed, artillery can just drive away, and they're fast enough to get there. But like adding these vehicles is going to change the game, because as soon as you have, like, at the beginning of the match, 2 of them on the enemy side, they're just gonna push through. They're not gonna give a crap about any of those vehicles sitting up front, and artillery's going to have a heyday. They're going to get busted so quickly. I mean, I'm laughing at that mention, because I think, well, this is the first time where artillery is going to be really scared of light tanks. Previously, light tanks, obviously, with tracks, they were not fast enough. Artillery could bash them without a doubt. And now it's going to be turning its entire thing up on the head. So we'll have to see how it's going to be looking like at the later tiers, tier 7, tier 8, tier 9, tier 10. Because at tier 6, it doesn't seem to be that bad. We're playing against tier 8 vehicles, right? But if we would be playing against tier 5 and tier 4 vehicles, which I didn't have the chance to get into, because no one is playing tier 5 and tier 4, it's going to be another route entirely, because what is it going to be looking like at tier 4 and tier 5 if you're playing such a tank right there? So right now, the skill gap, or just the new fact that the vehicle type that is in the game now with such different dynamics, it makes it very interesting for for experienced players like me to be driving them, because I had no idea how to control it at the beginning, and I still am kind of finding my way through them. And this is a perfect, okay, I'm not saying this is a perfect tank, no, absolutely not. It's sometimes not fast enough, it takes forever to turn if you're like stationary, and your hit points are a joke. You barely do any damage, 120 millimeters of penetration, but at the same time it gives you a nice taste of what is about to come at later stages, right? So this chaos, because I've played the other tiers as well, I just haven't made a video about them yet. I've played the other tiers, and that chaos is going to get a lot worse, I can tell you that. So the question now is World of Tanks ready for it, right? Is it ready at this stage? This is testing ground, we can test everything, and this is perfect. This is why we have test servers, so people can try them out. And that is really what I want to do right here. This is all that I'm trying to, this is what I'm preaching right here. You guys should really go test them out yourself, because the feeling of speed, it's just, you cannot describe it. You have to feel it yourself. You have to drive these tanks, especially tier 10, tier 9. It's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, we're going to be continuing with the next vehicle, the Hotchkiss, EBR Hotchkiss. That's going to be made or released tomorrow. I'm playing that vehicle up, down, center, wherever, left, right, and I'm trying to figure out how to play that one correctly. It's the last vehicle before you get to the cruise mode and the new mechanic completely, so it's going to be interesting to see how the tier 7 is going to be, this intermediate vehicle, before we go to the next mechanic. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I know it took a little bit longer. Unfortunately, I couldn't upload on Wednesday, and yeah, because they kind of took the test server offline for an entire day, so I was not able to get into the server. But now that I'm on, it is quite interesting to see how this is going to be developing. Up until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.